Looks can be deceiving. This 14-year-old with bushy bangs is a cold-blooded killer. She fatally shot her mother in the face and tried to kill her stepfather. As Jim Murray reports, it took the jury no time at all to decide this case.
What would drive a seemingly quiet 15-year-old to commit such an unthinkable act?
As to 3 teens accused in a series of robberies and a murder all within a day and a half. Channel 2 Action News was in court as the suspects went before a judge today.
Zachary Davis' chilling crime has left the world questioning the dark side of human nature.
Justin, a man says as he walked on this sidewalk between hotels on Celebration Drive, a teenage girl walked up to him, asked him if he had a phone charger. When he said no, he says another teen came up, stuck a gun in his face, and robbed him of everything he had on him. Police now believe those 2 teens and a third had actually killed a man in a robbery just 5 hours earlier.
You won't believe the twisted truth behind his actions. Stay tuned and don't miss out on the shocking details of this disturbing case. In the small town of Hendersonville, Tennessee, the sudden violent death of Melanie Davis raised unsettling questions about her son, Zachary. At first glance, the case seemed like an accident, a simple house fire. But when the body of Melanie Davis was discovered, things took a much darker turn. She hadn't died from the flames, but from the brutal strikes of a sledgehammer. Her son, Zachary, would be questioned. But what unfolded in that room was a chilling unraveling of a disturbed mind. A narrative of a crime that wasn't just impulsive, but carefully thought out. The callousness of a quiet mind. The investigation begins in a routine manner. Zachary Davis, a 15-year-old teenager, is brought in for questioning. But there is something unnervingly off about him. His monotone voice, lack of emotion, and cold demeanor immediately put the detectives on edge. This was not the normal response from a grieving child. When asked if he was upset over the death of his father 5 years earlier, Zachary simply shrugged it off, stating that it didn't bother him. His expression remained flat throughout, giving nothing away. Is this emotional detachment a sign of a disturbed mind, or is it simply a defense mechanism, something far more calculated? A history of tragedy. To understand Zachary, we must first look at his background. His father, Chris, passed away when Zachary was just 9 years old from ALS, a cruel and degenerative disease. This loss, while undoubtedly painful, marked the beginning of Zachary's retreat into himself. As the years passed, his behavior grew increasingly erratic. A quiet child became a withdrawn teenager, and soon after the move to a new town, Zachary began seeing a therapist. His mother, concerned about his emotional state, sought professional help. Zachary was diagnosed with depression and later psychosis, a condition often linked to schizophrenia. However, it was the unspoken rift that seemed to develop between him and his mother that would eventually turn this tragedy into something far darker. The descent into violence. Despite therapy, Zachary's behavior deteriorated. He claimed to hear the voice of his deceased father urging him to take action. But what action? What is the point when you feel completely isolated, unheard, or worse, abandoned? Zachary's condition worsened as he stewed in the silence of his thoughts. It was during this time that the first signs of a plan began to form. He started to keep strange notes, filled with disjointed thoughts, some of which hinted at violent fantasies. Yet, despite these unsettling writings, there were no outward signs of the storm brewing inside him, at least, not to anyone around him. A sinister normalcy. The day before Melanie Davis was killed seemed utterly normal. The Davis family went about their day. Melanie and her sons went to the orthodontist, attended a movie, and exchanged affectionate messages about spending time together. There was no indication that this ordinary day would turn into one of horror. In their text exchanges, Zachary and his mother sounded like any other family, planning their next move. Yet beneath the surface, something was festering. Zachary was planning his mother's murder, and the fire he would set afterward, an attempt to erase the evidence, was part of a more elaborate plan to destroy his past, to escape. A mother's final moments, around 11 p.m., after ensuring that everyone in the house was asleep, Zachary set his plan into motion. He took a sledgehammer and entered his mother's room. She was sleeping, unaware of the violence that would soon consume her. In a moment that would haunt investigators, Zachary hit his mother 12 times. She did not wake up during the attack, and after her death, he checked her pulse to confirm she was gone. There was no remorse, no emotion in his actions. He simply did it, methodically, coldly, and without hesitation. A failed attempt to erase the evidence. After the murder, Zachary did not simply flee. He set fire to the house, hoping to destroy any evidence of his crime and to ensure that his brother Josh would also die in the flames. But something went wrong. The fire didn't spread as he had hoped. and after fleeing the house, Zachary walked several miles to a convenience store. He bought a Pepsi, as if nothing had happened. It was as if the gravity of his actions hadn't yet set in. Was he simply indifferent to the consequences, or was this a sign of something deeper? A complete breakdown of his ability to understand the moral weight of his actions. Cracking under the surface, Zachary's interrogation is where his true nature begins to emerge. He speaks in a monotone, often answering questions with chilling nonchalance. When asked why he killed his mother, he doesn't provide a coherent reason. He speaks vaguely, as if trying to explain away his crime with a mixture of indifference and a sense of twisted pride. At one point, he even laughs when recounting a horror. This response, disturbing as it is, hints at something far deeper, perhaps a personality disorder or a desperate attempt to play the role of the villain in his own life. But as the hours stretch on, it becomes clear that Zachary's emotions are deeply repressed, if not completely shut off. He is cold, calculating, and detached from the reality of what he has done. Unpacking the mind of a killer, the psychology behind Zachary's crime is complex. Early on, investigators noticed that he seemed to be mimicking the traits of a serial killer. His obsession with death, his cold demeanor, and his fixation on violence, both in real life and in fiction, suggest that Zachary might have been trying to emulate the killers he studied. His internet history revealed a disturbing fascination with serial murders and torture devices. It's as though he was attempting to craft an identity for himself in the darkness, a figure of power and control, something he lacked in his own life. A cry for help or a cry for glory. But was this really a cry for help or a way for Zachary to exert control over a world he felt powerless in? His actions suggest that he might have been trying to push the boundaries of his own existence. After the crime, his behavior was inconsistent, at times seeming detached at others, expressing feelings of regret or even fear. But it wasn't long before he would change his story again. During his trial, he blamed his brother for the murder. Was this a desperate attempt to escape responsibility, or was it part of a deeper psychological struggle? The complexities of his psyche continue to baffle those who study him. A final act of manipulation? In the courtroom, Zachary would shock everyone once again by altering his story, claiming that his brother Josh had killed their mother and that he had simply taken the fall. His defense attorneys tried to argue that he was mentally incompetent, but the evidence painted a different picture. Zachary's ability to manipulate the situation, even in the face of overwhelming evidence, further confirmed his disturbing mindset. Ultimately, Zachary was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to 71 years in prison. The psychological impact of the crime. Zachary's case serves as a chilling reminder of how deeply mental illness can influence behavior. It raises questions about the nature of guilt, morality, and the true consequences of a fractured mind. Was Zachary a victim of his own mind or a cold, calculating killer who learned how to manipulate and deceive everyone around him? The legacy of his crime lives on, not just in the death of his mother, but in the fractured lives of his family, the unanswered questions, and the psychological legacy of a disturbed mind. The mind of Zachary Davis is one that confounds every viewer, filled with twists, contradictions, and chilling moments that make you question how much is nature, how much is nurture, and how much is simply beyond understanding. His story raises important questions about mental illness, manipulation, and the fragility of the human psyche. But this story doesn't end here. In our next video, we dive into the chilling transformation of someone you'd never expect, when a normal neighbor turned into a deadly predator. What could possibly drive an ordinary person to become a monster hiding in plain sight? Make sure you subscribe, because you don't want to miss the jaw-dropping twists we've uncovered. Trust me, it's a case you'll have to see to believe.